SCORE Northeast Wisconsin and WHBY are pleased to bring you Biz Talk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences. From starting to sustaining growth, learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you miss anything, you can catch the Biz Talk podcast at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's Biz Talk on WHBY.
A good Saturday morning to everybody, and welcome to Biz Talk. We're glad you joined us this week. And I'm Terry Pinch, one of your co-hosts, and joining me as co-host this week is Rick Sense. Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Terry.
Good. We're according to the groundhogs, there's either a lot more winter to come or not very much. So we have a wide range.
But it's always fun this time of year. It's going to happen eventually. Just everybody be patient. So
yeah. So this week we have a interesting and unique guest. It's Kate Stenson from Kate Stenson Music. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
And what makes Kate so unique is she is a professional musician, just recently, about 2 years, graduated from Lawrence University, and she's got quite a grouping of different things she's doing as part of being a professional musician. And we're going to talk to her all about that. But to get started, Kate, can you just introduce yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Kate, as Terry said, and I'm a violinist, vocalist, songwriter, and looper. And basically what that entails is I write my own originals and perform covers. I do that in a solo setting, and I also have a couple bands I'm in as well. But yeah, essentially I perform full time, and that's how I make my income.
Okay, so let's start with that education. I mentioned Lawrence University, but can you talk a little bit about how you were trained, both when you were young, what got you into music, and then what you learned at Lawrence?
Yeah, so music started for me from a very young age. So my dad is actually a band director up in Howard, Swamico. So he kind of got me and all of my siblings into music. So I started violin when I was 6, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. I always knew music was going to be a part of my life. I didn't realize it would be in a performing aspect until I got to high school. So it was just strictly violin up until high school. And then once I got into high school, I started singing. And then I was approached by my musical theater teacher, and he asked if I wanted to be part of a band. He was starting with some of the other students, and he was going to act like a mentor for us. So then we started playing out, like at, bars or other venues local in the Green Bay area, and kind of just like fell in love with it. It really resonated with me a lot more than I thought teaching would, because that was kind of what I had envisioned for myself in the beginning, was going into education. But then I got into performing, and from there I kind of figured out, like, okay, this is going to be what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I started looking at schools, and Lawrence University popped up. And they had introduced this new program called a Bachelor of Musical Arts. So basically what that entailed was 50% of the degree program was contemporary and jazz improvisation, which is just a mouthful. But then the other 50% was entrepreneurship, or any area of focus that you wanted to choose. But I wanted to do entrepreneurship because I had heard from a lot of musicians in the area, like as I had been performing, since 15, right? Like in high school, I'd heard from a lot of people, like, I wish I had studied the business side of music more before getting into it, right? And so, yeah, when I went to Lawrence, I focused on entrepreneurship, and I think it was a great opportunity for me. Um, yeah.
So one thing maybe a lot of listeners aren't fully aware of yet, but Lawrence has been really moving into combining entrepreneurship with various arts programs. And in fact,
Yes.
they built a space they have a space in College Avenue where they actually have a lot of the entrepreneurial courses. So you must have been in one of the first classes.
Yeah. So yeah, like with that degree program, like I
Yeah.
was talking about, it was, I was the first official class that they introduced it to. They had kind of previewed it on a couple of classes before me, but this, Bachelor of Musical Arts, which again was the music and entrepreneurship side of that, I was the first class that they had introduced that officially to.
Okay. So when you got in, when you were coming out of school, what led you to the decision that you were going to try performing full time rather than taking another job and doing part-time performing?
Sure. I guess for me, like I said, I'd always wanted to do performing, and during my course of being at Lawrence, I really got into solo performing, and part of that was due to COVID, honestly. Because my freshman year, I didn't know anybody, and that aligned with 2020 when the pandemic happened. And so I was spending a lot of time in my room, just kind of solo. And I don't know if any of the listeners know what a looping pedal is out there. Basically what it is, it's a pedal that records, a little sample of whatever instrument or voice you have plugged into it. And you have to time it just right, because essentially when you're done recording it, it plays it back on a loop. That's why it's called a looping pedal. And anyways, I kind of figured out, okay, like this is something I can do as a solo artist. And once I figured that out, I took a couple years, I guess I would say, while I was doing other music things, figured out what kind of songs I wanted to be performing out. And then once I started performing out with this solo set, I kind of figured out very quickly how lucrative it was to be a solo artist. I feel like there's a lot more opportunities in this area to be doing that. And like I said, it's just more lucrative. So once I figured that out, I, figured out that I wanted to be doing it full time. Figured out that I could make it work full time, right? Because that was the question: can you do this full time? And so, I decided to just full send, go for it, and I couldn't be happier. It's awesome.
Okay. So first, you mentioned you play the violin, you sing as well, you have the
Yeah.
looping pedal. Do you play
Yes.
other instruments as well?
I sort of dabble in other instruments. So for my songwriting, it's really helpful to have chorded instruments. So I know enough, I guess, on guitar and piano to play those sufficiently. It really helps for my songwriting, like I said, so that's why I taught myself how to do those instruments. I used to play other instruments when I was in high school, for band, but I would say pretty much violin and voice are the main ones.
Okay. So you mentioned playing in groups too. What are the
Yeah.
groups that you're in?
Yes. So I'm in a couple different ones. I am in a 5-piece all-female band called Wine on Fridays. And we are, I would say, like a high energy band. We do covers and originals. Our genres are kind of all over the place, but I would say it's a mixture of pop, R&B, jazz influences, and then indie as well. And that one's so much fun. We actually just played at Mile of Music, which is an all original music festival in Appleton, for the first time this past August, and that was a very exciting opportunity for us. So that's got a lot of great directions that band is going. I also am in an all original bluegrass band as well. And so that one, the instrumentation is a little non-traditional. We've got cello, violin, ukulele bass, which is bass, but it's like, you know, in the shape of a ukulele. So that's how he plays it. And then guitar. And so that one has got a lot of potential as well. We just finished recording a couple of songs at TRS Recording Studios down in Oshkosh. And so we're hoping to release those on streaming platforms within the next month. So that's also very exciting. And then I also have a couple of other things in the works as well. There's a duo that I have, I guess the official name for it right now is Couple of Birds. But basically one of the people in Wine on Fridays, she is a pianist and also a vocalist, and her and I co-write a lot of the originals that we do in that band. Her name is Jen, and together we do some duo stuff sometimes, and so that is also something that we do as well when we're not with the band.
Okay. So you like to keep busy.
Yes, I like to keep busy for sure.
So one other quick mention I'll just make too, I saw is that you have performed with the Clausen Farms as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah, so that is actually probably how I'm able to do it full time, if I'm being honest. So the Clausen Family Music Show, they are this dinner theater show hosted in Coloma, Wisconsin, which is in the center of the state, if you're not familiar with that area. And we put on like series throughout the year, usually a week, maybe 2 weeks long, up until Christmas. And then Christmas is like a 6-week long series. But that's a lot of fun too. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone in terms of the kind of music we're playing. But I'm really enjoying learning from that experience as well. And like I said, they keep me, you know, funded for doing full-time music. So I'm happy to be playing with them as well.
Okay. So before we go to break, I'll just mention quickly too, and we'll talk about it more later, that you released your own album, I guess you'd call it, on streaming as well. What's that called?
Yes. That is called Momentary.
Great. And so we'll come back and talk about that a little bit more later. But that is one of the nice things you've got with the way digital works these days, is that you can release albums in ways that you maybe couldn't 20, 30
Yes.
years ago. So,
Yes.
So, all right. So we're at the point we're going to take our first break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and we're right back after these messages.
Welcome back to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY. I'm Rick Stenson along with Terry Pinch this week, and we are having a wonderful conversation with Kate Stenson. And if you're into music, you want to stick around for this conversation. But before we get back to that conversation, I just want to take a moment to talk to you about Score. Score Northeast Wisconsin serves a 29-county area in northern Wisconsin and includes areas of Appleton, Green Bay, and Points West. We are a group that consists of 50 volunteers, each an expert in their own field, offering entrepreneurs no-cost and confidential mentoring. Those areas of expertise include IT, social media, marketing, cash flow, accounting, strategic planning, workflow, HR, retail best practices, and many, many others. In order to register for a no-cost confidential mentoring session, And or to learn more about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And you can learn more about how the SCORE chapter can assist you with starting and or growing your business. And you can complete an application for a mentoring session. Simply complete that online form and submit it to SCORE. Within a few days, a SCORE mentor will be contacting you to set up a meeting. And remember, SCORE is no cost and offers experts who can offer you assistance in many different areas. To get started, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And finally, this reminder about Biz Talk with SCORE and our podcast. The Biz Talk with SCORE podcast brings you the same real-world information and insights from experienced entrepreneurs and business leaders, just like Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY. However, the Biz Talk with SCORE podcast is available when you are. So listen and subscribe today, tomorrow, or whenever you want. Available on most podcatchers and podcast apps. So thanks again for joining us this morning on Biz Talk. And now back to the program. Kate, I have to ask you, you had the good opportunity to perform at Mile of Music this year. Can you just tell listeners a little bit about that experience and where you hope that leads?
Yes. Well, first of all, it was probably one of the most exciting performances of my life. I actually have been going to Mile of Music since 2018, since, I was a teenager. And that was, I'd only been writing songs for maybe a couple years at that point. And just being able to witness artists sharing their original work and being appreciated in such a, community supportive way, made me, want to share my original work in that way as well. So I made it a goal for myself. I'd love to be a part of this festival and get in. And so I, figured out kind of what iteration I wanted, in terms of a band and what kind of originals that we wanted to share. And I kept applying. It's a very competitive festival, which just means that there's just a ton of talent out there. And so I was super honored when we were accepted into last year's festival. And I just remember the band being super excited. And we spent literally months working on our set list and making sure everything was in order for a great performance. And part of the reason we got accepted as well was just, honestly, it's about connections, right? So I had been playing at Gibson Music Hall. I'd played there, I think, in 2022 for the first time with a Lawrence collective, I would say, of songwriters. And we were putting on a little showcase. And that was one of the first performances I ever did with my looping pedal, which was very exciting. And I remember talking with Dave a lot, who's the owner there at Gibson. And once I started co-writing with Jen, which is the other lead singer in Wine on Fridays, we decided we should make a duo set and we should, try to get into Gibson. And Dave was super happy to have us. We played probably 3 or 4 times, I would say, before getting officially accepted into Mile. And then, we had 2 sets. We had a duo set, and then we had a full band set with the band Wine on Fridays. And it was just an incredible experience because we were very fortunate, first of all, to have a very big crowd at each venue that we played at. And a lot of them were local faces. They were people from this community that have been coming out to our shows and supporting us. And I think it's a really special festival. I don't think there's anything like it, to be honest. It's so rewarding. And like I said, it just shows how supportive this community is of their original artists in the area and also out of state as well.
In the short time we have left of the segment, there's a lot of people in the music industry that feel you have to be in LA or Nashville or New York to really accomplish it or make it big. But could you maybe just spend a little bit of time talking about why markets like the Fox cities are emerging as really maybe you don't need to go to those other markets to do well and make your business work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, first of all, I think we have a ton of talent right here in our backyard. But one, I guess advantage to being here versus all of those huge cities, is that there are a lot more opportunities, I guess, because there's a smaller network of musicians in this area. And I think people here are just as willing to have musicians. It's still a competitive market. That's not what I'm saying. But I think, like I said, with that community support, there is a way to make it possible here because venues are, if you're finding the right market, venues are still very willing to compensate you appropriately, and maybe even more so than some of the other big cities like you named. And like I said, there's just a ton of talent out there. There's a lot of, I guess collectives maybe is the right way to say it, emerging here. I don't know if listeners are familiar with like Fox Menagerie, but that's a really cool collective as well, right? It's like our own almost tiny desk right here in the Fox Valley area. And there's so much other cool networks happening in this area as well. And yeah, I think if you want to make it work here, you definitely can. There are enough resources available to you to make it happen.
All right. With that, we're going to take our next break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back to Biz Talk. Our guest this week is Kate Stenson from Kate Stenson Music. But before we get back to Kate, I have an education update to give you. I've mentioned it many times before, but if you go to our score.org/Northeast Wisconsin website, and on the top, click on workshops and events, you're going to find a vast array of different options for courses. Well, we have a new option that's coming out there from SCORE, and it's in the online courses section. So score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, workshops and events and online courses. And it's called the SCORE Academy. And these are much more in-depth learning in various critical business areas. And there are a series of videos, content like presentations and resources as you can get to. And they're quite in depth. Some of them might go 7, 8, 10 lessons, but they're a little more in depth. There is a charge for these series. For instance, the one I'm going to mention now is $99 for the 2 courses, but it's for small businesses as they start up. And one is Artificial Intelligence Automation Blueprint. So how to use artificial intelligence as you start up a small business. And the other one is Artificial Intelligence for Sales and Marketing Content, Marketing Content Leads and Outreach. So 2 content options there that will help you as you start up your business, learn how to use artificial intelligence for a small fee, but they're in-depth courses with a very good presenter, and hopefully you can learn from a lot of those. But those various series will grow over time as they add more different ones. But that's the SCORE Academy again on the score.org website. So with that now, we're going to turn back to Kate. And Kate, I'd like to start first to talk about how you found SCORE and the help you got from your mentor, Paul Caron.
Yes. So I actually found SCORE through my grandparents. So I, at the time, was living with them for a little bit post-grad at Lawrence. And I had been doing performing, but then, for the 3 months after graduation, I was like working at a music store part-time. And I had kind of been communicating with them, my grandparents, like, hey, I really want to make this music thing happen, like full time. And, I just kind of want to like go for it. And they had read somewhere, I'm not quite sure how they found out about SCORE, but my grandpa specifically, he had told me about SCORE and really recommended it because he'd heard great things about it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Like it's, because obviously I'd learned a lot in college about entrepreneurship, but at the time I maybe didn't have the right questions to ask. And so I never asked them, because when I finally decided to come around and do performing full time, I, had a lot of questions like, oh, like, how do I start my LLC and like what's involved with that? And, Paul, my mentor, was very, very helpful in answering all my questions, just walking me everything through step by step. And, he was always very helpful, like I said. And if he didn't have the answer right away, he would, reach out to his circle and see if anyone else had any insight to any of the questions I wanted to answer. And everyone, that helped with that was super, super helpful, like I said. And I don't think I would have been able to do it as efficiently if I didn't have SCORE. And I'm very grateful for everything that transpired by reaching out to them.
Okay. And I think I'm going to stay on the business side just a bit more here and go to talk about the business plan. So as you're building your business and creating a business plan, how did you think through what options you had and build a plan that worked for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So through one of my entrepreneurship classes in Lawrence, I think it was my junior or my senior year, we did actually have to create a business plan for a, mock business, which I obviously chose to do, a mock solo musician lifestyle. And so I had already figured out some of that through that class. But when I decided to fully make the leap in August of 2024, I basically looked at what I had been doing performing, right? Because I was part-time already doing solo sets and with various groups. But because I also was working part-time at a music store, I, didn't know fully how that would look if I switched to doing performing full-time. And so I kind of looked at the numbers. It was a lot of guesswork, honestly. And basically what I did for myself in the first couple months is I was very, very adamant on having everything laid out in like spreadsheets, right? So like all the, profit and loss statements, making sure my cash flow was, good, that there was cash flow, and basically just reevaluating on like a month by month basis for the first couple months, because I really wasn't sure how much business I would get. And all I was doing for the month of September was basically just sending probably hundreds of outreach emails or going in person to certain venues, and just trying to get anything. And honestly, a lot of learning experience from that, because I think that really helped pave the way for me down the road. I definitely don't do as much outreach as I did in the beginning, because a really nice thing about word of mouth, which I feel like is the best way, to get my name out there, is that what's a really cool thing is a lot of venues have actually been reaching out to me, which was not something that was happening at first, right? Because I was, maybe not as well known. People didn't know who Kate Stenson was at that point when I first started the business. But now that I've been established for a little bit over a year, and I've had my hand in, I guess, a lot of different groups in the area or different music experiences, people now are starting to recognize my name. And, I think it's a really great thing too, that venues that I have played at, they have asked me to play back there. I think the hardest part about any business really is just getting your foot in the door for your customers, which in my case, customers are the venues that want to hire me. And so, I guess going back to the business plan side of things, right? Like I said, it basically was just reevaluating on a month by month basis to make sure I was being realistic about my numbers and making sure that it worked for me.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, how many performances a month on average do you think you do?
Well, that depends, because each performance has a different monetary value with it, right? So as I mentioned before, solo sets are the most lucrative, and I've actually made it a priority for me in the past, I would say 4 or 5 months, to be focusing more on weddings, because that is also a more lucrative side of the business as well. So depending on that aspect of things, what type of performances, I guess maybe would be the appropriate way to say that. I would say it's a fluctuation for sure. January through March is definitely the driest season for live music. On average for these 3 months, I would say I'm playing maybe 5 shows a month. It's not anything crazy. So, that's just kind of how it is. But then it gets a lot busier in the summer, right? Because everyone wants music. We're outdoors again. People want, music playing on the patio while customers are eating. And so in the summer, I would say, especially with the Clausen show that I'm part of, which is you play daily shows for the week-long series or however long it is, I would say I would be playing at least 20 shows a month in those summer months, the busy months. So it's really fluctuation, but like I said, just kind of depends on all that.
Okay. So let's switch and talk about the album.
Yes.
Momentary. Can you tell us I'm assuming you always had thought about that. What made you decide the time was right, and how did you go about getting it done?
Yes. So I had been sitting on a lot of originals for a while at that point. The whole album is basically a loose concept of just experiences I had throughout my college years, essentially. And so I had a lot of material because, just an exciting time, transition period, right? Going into college and all that jazz. So I'd been sitting on a lot for a while, and my very good friend, Michael Murphy, who is also a prominent musician in the Fox Valley area. He had graduated a year ahead of me at Lawrence, and we'd been good friends since we studied abroad in London together, but I just was kind of chatting with him about how I wanted to, make it a priority eventually to record these songs. And he was like, well, why couldn't I do it for you? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess you could, because he is a producer as well as being a performing musician. And so basically I narrowed it down to 9 songs that I wanted included on this album. And we started getting together at his house, his parents' house in Neenah, and just started recording track by track. Michael was absolutely just amazing, because he not only produced the entire album, but he also played most of the instruments on there as well. He played guitar, bass, and drums on there. And then I sang and played violin. And then he had his brother Jack play keys on the album when they were necessary. And then my co-writer for Wine on Fridays, Jen, she did some background vocals on that as well. So it really just was, it came together, and a lot of it was, kind of, I guess doing it on a budget, so to speak, right? Because normally if you were going into like, I guess a more official studio, you'd have someone apart from the producer playing those other instrumental tracks. But Michael was, like I said, just really amazing to work with, and was super willing to do those parts for the album, and it came together in a really beautiful way, and I was very happy with the result.
And how can our listeners find the album?
Yes. So you can find it on any preferred streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, whatever. You just look up Momentary by Kate Stenson, and you should be able to find it.
Okay. And you mentioned with one of the groups you're looking at recording another one. Will you do
Yes.
another solo album at some point?
I would love to do another solo album, but it's not a priority right now, I guess is maybe the way to say that. I have a lot of great things in the works with these 2 bands that I'm a part of, Gold Standard, the bluegrass band, and then Wine on Fridays. We're both really have a lot of good originals we want to record right now, and so that's more of a focus for me at this point, but I would love to do another solo album in a couple years.
Okay. So with all the different types of music, what's your favorite?
Well, that's a really hard question. I love all of it. I think really it's not about the type of music for me at this point. It's about, I guess, maybe the passion and emotion behind the music. I've, like even with this bluegrass band, so I'd always considered myself more of like a pop, jazz, R&B artist, and that is what my solo album is mostly of. But, I always had an appreciation for bluegrass, but never like, didn't really think it was my cup of tea, I guess maybe is the right way to phrase that. But, being in this band, and our one of our vocalists, bass player Ian, he writes most of the material for this band, and just being a witness to the kind of material he's writing, lyrically and instrumentally, it's just honestly like I said, I guess it's what speaks to me most at this point. If you got good lyrics and you've got a great melody line and you, I guess, know how to phrase the song and arrange it in a great way, like I'm going to be on board with it.
Great. This is the time for our final break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score and WHBY. We'll be right back. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their generous support of Biz Talk. Haling & Associates helps small businesses and individuals not just prepare tax returns, but plan for the future. Haling & Associates, personal connection, positive results. Wherever you are in the life of your business, Johnson Financial Group works to match the banking and wealth services needed to help you complete your mission. Thank you to the Business News for promoting our program in the bi-weekly business newspaper serving Northeast Wisconsin. They provide the latest business news and topics for this region. We are grateful for the support of Community First Credit Union. At its core, Community First is a community of member owners where people work together to improve their financial well-being and help one another. New North, the Regional Marketing and Economic Development Corporation, is an active supporter of SCORE. The New North facilitates economic growth and helps people in this region live their best lives. Since 1919, Baird has helped guide families through investment, trust, estate, and tax planning. So no matter what the future brings, you can be confident you're ready, because your family is Baird's focus. And finally, we would like to recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund within the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation to BizTalk and SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. And now we'll turn back to our guest, Kate of Kate Stenson Music. And Kate, could you let our listeners know how they can find you and contact you?
Yes. So I would say the hubbub for all the ways you can contact me is by going to my website, which is www.katestensonmusic.com. On there, you'll find all the landing pages for all the groups I'm in, which is Gold Standard, Wine on Fridays, and Couple of Birds, which is the duo of Wine on Fridays. Also on there, you'll find my email address, my social media links like Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. My email is katestensonmusic@gmail.com. But, like I said, you can find any of that information included on my website.
Great. And so as we wrap up the show, let's talk about what the future holds for Kate Stenson Music.
Yes. So I think that's a great question. I think right now, as I'm trying to make it work and like I said, reevaluating constantly to see what's happening, in the future, as I get more established, I really want to be focusing on my originals. And I think that includes both of these bands that I'm in, Gold Standard and Wine on Fridays. But I would love to make a more established name for myself. Like I said, in the future, just be performing mostly original music is, I think, the dream for me.
Great. And as you look around at what's happened so far, have you exceeded your expectations?
I do think so. I think, I think sometimes I forget how far I've come since I started. I feel like I've been hearing a lot lately that a lot of my fellow musicians in the area, when I, see them after not seeing them in person for a while, they'll tell me like, oh, I've been seeing you everywhere. And I sometimes forget like how much of an accomplishment that is, to be employed and be working at venues as much as I have been, and just to be recognized the way I've been recognized.
Okay, great. Well, Kate, we really appreciate you being on this show. It's both unique and quite exciting thing you're trying to do, and we hope you're very successful at it.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Okay. You've been listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and if you want to hear past episodes, you can go to our website at sport.org, Northeast Wisconsin, or you can go to your favorite podcatcher, iTunes, Amazon Music, etc., to find previous episodes as well. We really appreciate having you listen in, and join us again next week when we have another guest that we know you'll love to hear about. Thanks, everyone.